Welcome back, devotees, to the Sticks and Bones podcast, and a special shout out to the residents of the underworld, which is our Patreon members, our very lovely Patreon members who support us and all the things that we do and extra content. We just wanted to give you a special shout out today because we love you guys very much. And we're kind of switching it up the beginning of this episode. We have a very exciting announcement about Patreon that cannot wait any further. So I'm gonna let Dr. K talk about some of the exciting Patreon news because honestly, we just couldn't wait. We're holding off on the updates because Patreon, we need to know what's going on.
Boop, 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 boop. Breaking news on Patreon, everybody. So with Patreon, and a special welcome to the residents of the underworld. I feel like I'm a flight attendant on, underworld air, if you will. But we have some new tiers coming about because you guys have been asking for more content, more Sticks and Bones, more Chelsea, more 10, more spooky, more everything. So we heard you and we were thinking, hey, in order to do this, we're going to have to create more realms in the underworld. And, we had to include that historically. So here are what the new tiers are going to look like. So we have tier 1, which is going to be the shores of Acheron, right? Where everybody's waiting. I hope you brought your obol. Tier 2 is going to be Asphodel Meadows, which is where a good amount of people were going to end up in the ancient world. And then finally, a top tier is going to be Elysium, right? The best of the best. Not even heroes made it a lot of the times to Elysium. But with that being said, what you can expect on the first tier is, again, early access to podcasts every single time that they drop. You are getting an extra podcast every single month. And tier 2 is getting all of that good stuff and book club as well. So again, don't forget the month of July that we are in right now is going to be the book Circe. We are covering the first half this month. So don't forget to get your bookmarks out and begin reading. And for Elysium, you're getting all of that and more goodies. You're getting extra deeper dives onto crazier topics, recorded lives, and yes, even some special merch coming soon. Potential. Like we have so many things in the works and we can't say everything.
We can't. Yeah, the last year you'll be getting everything plus all of that stuff. So we already started discussing there'll be exclusive products in the store that'll only be for people in the Elysium tier, and you're the only ones that can buy it. So it's really going to go off. I will give you a hint. Some mystery cult things that we've been talking about and some celebrations of the gods that will be exclusive to the Elysium tier only. So that'll be certain times of the year where we will handcraft things, maybe some merch coming. I don't know. Who could say? Who could say? We can't talk about it because it's a mystery cult.
It's a mystery cult. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Bob's your uncle. I don't know, but welcome to the mystery cult, everybody. I hope you find your realm.
To the mystery cult, your only initiation is your entry fee. That is monetary value to a tier. That's it.
That's it. No obols, no nothing. We don't show goat penises on a mountain.
No flogging.
None of that stuff. So stop asking us about that.
We're not. I know people want that. We say this every episode. I'm like,
no.
Where would I?
We're not taking you into a dark room for the Eleusinian mysteries. No.
I mean, I kind of want to do that, but like, I don't have time.
Like, we'll have a sleepover one time, Chelsea, and I'll be like, okay, come on.
It reminds me of like sorority initiation. Like when I think of mystery cults, and I think we've mentioned this, it reminds me of like when I had to get initiated into my sorority. I'm an alpha phi, by the way. Shout out AOE to any other alpha phis out there. And I had no idea what was going on 98% of the time. I was like, I just came here for fun. I didn't know we actually had to do things.
I have to learn.
I need to know a secret knock.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's actually how I teach mystery cults is anybody in a frat or sorority? And I'm like, can you tell me everything? And they're like, no. And I'm like, there you go. Now you understand what the ancients were doing too.
Exactly. But yeah, we're really excited. Also, every time you mention book club, I'm like, listen, I like to read, but sometimes I'm like, I can't believe I signed myself up for this. I love reading and I love book club, but when someone's like, we're doing book club and you have to read it by this date, not you guys, me, because I have to record the episode. I'm like, I just want to scream into the ether. I'm like, oh, okay. But I'm excited for Circe though. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I love Circe.
Very excited. And I think because like, once you're told to do something, you're like, well, I'm not doing it now. Like that kind of mentality.
That's me.
Like if I have everything to do, of course I'm going to sit down and read a book, but if I'm told to read, that's where I'm going to hiss like a cat. But with this, that's why we're trying to break it up of like we're doing half and half. So like you're not like, oh, we're reading.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. It's just I don't think I've ever been a part of a book club before. So I'm like, this is
I
like an honor for me, and we're running it. Like I'm like, Ted and I are really doing some research about book club and like, what's the proper way to conduct said book club? Like what do the girls do in the book clubs?
what what do I ask? What questions do I ask? Do I
Yeah.
bring snacks? I don't know.
Oh my God, I wish I can bring you guys snacks. I would bake some bread and tray of ziti and we could just sit there and eat and
And talk.
full of
Like
carbs.
all carb load and talk
Yeah,
about services.
maybe bring your dinner to book club. Like if you're watching the
Mm,
video with us,
I know. I'm like,
maybe
do we
we
eat?
bring like coffee or snacks when we talk about book club.
I mean, I'm
I
down. I love eating.
Oh, same, same. I always, if you've ever had a reading with me, I always bring you guys probably know this mug. This is the reading mug, especially when I'm doing readings on Hecate because of the moon phases. And I have to have coffee when I'm doing
Mhm.
readings for people because then I feel like weird, I don't, might be like my comfort thing. Do you have anything by you when you're teaching or doing a lecture? Like, I need to have a cup of coffee.
Um, when I'm in person, I'm one of those professors who have like a clicker. So like I will also like go and jump on people's desks and like get in people's faces and like laser point things and be like, whoa, 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 look at this. But that's kind of it. Like my emotional support, like clicker and laser. When I'm teaching here, Voodoo is in fact my emotional support teacher.
I get that.
She's my co-captain. She is literally in every single lecture for my students. And I'm like, are you student teaching, girl? What's going on?
She is. Well, she needs to pay rent. Yeah, Pluto, he's not in my videos as much anymore. I don't think he likes the spotlight as much when he was like back in the day. He always used to be here. He's asleep always on the floor next to me in his pink fluffy tent. Um, he's just a
I love it.
girl. And his rhinestone collar. What is he, one of them queers? He might be. Who knows?
He's
I love that
he's
for him.
just he's his little boy.
He's just a girl. I let him embrace whatever. You want a pink tent? Mom gets you a pink tent. I don't care. He's just a fluffy boy. Anyway, okay. So I know we have a lot to talk about today, and we have a
So much.
very, very crazy episode, as you can tell by
Oh,
the title, right? You're like,
oh.
what prompted you guys to do this? But before we get there, okay, let's get the housekeeping out of the way. We have
Yes.
a very important shop update. So
Boo, 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 boo.
today, in the store at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, we are launching Aphrodite's collection again, for those of you that might have missed it the first time around, and the lovely Enchantress collection, which is an aspect of Aphrodite and is really for beauty. And it's one of my favorite things. I actually light that candle in the morning when I'm getting ready. Every single time. Every single time I'm getting ready or doing my makeup, I light that candle. And it
I love
makes
that.
me just not for like glamour or anything. It's to just like, be in my beauty routine and be present with what's going on and like maybe try some different eyeshadow that day or get yourself a new lipstick. So
Ooh.
that's coming out. The week prior to this, I'm unsure if we still have any inventory left, but we did launch Apollo, Dionysus, and Hermes in the store. They are here for the summer. The
Whoop, whoop.
brothers. Which one? How many? Zeus has so many kids, as we
Oh
talked
yeah.
about.
Which ones? Which ones are we picking?
Which was, if you haven't listened to that episode. So there's a possibility that we do have stock left over from that as well. So if you're like, I want a candle for Apollo, Dionysus, or Hermes, well, they're back in the store and they will be here for the summer. So go get yourself some temple products for your altars. And that's that. That's all I have to say. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's it.
No, that's it. Okay. Well, before we start today's episode, we'll check in before we talk about these topics. How are you doing, Ten? How are you feeling? What's going on?
I'm good. Not a lot of lore updates. I feel like I have not had enough time to develop lore. And the more we film, the more I'm kind of thinking I'm just a boring person because I'm all I do is work.
No, we were talking about this before the podcast and we both looked at each other and we were like, do you have any like lore that you're going to talk about? Like maybe, I remember something you told me that maybe you want to talk about. And also this month we on Patreon, we did do a whole episode called What Are the Girls Doing? Where we did give life updates. So maybe that's why we feel like we have nothing
I
else
know.
to say.
I
Like
know.
it was just us really like bantering and just talking about like life updates, things we're doing, full moon stuff, like just fun.
Garden updates, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, the garden updates, but I too don't have any lore, and I don't know if that's a good thing.
I'm
Are we
unsure of how to
boring?
feel. I I kind of enjoy being boring.
I think, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was a little cranky today because I've just been working so much, and like unfortunately it's just stuff that I have to do. It's not, Chelsea needs to put something down and go take a break. It's Chelsea needs to do these things today. Because I've already pushed them back because I needed a
Yes.
break. And so I think I'm just like I'm just cranky. I'm a little cranky. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, I got that.
But I think that's fair. I think it's unrealistic for one of us or both of us to show up every day and be like, life is great and beautiful. And we have so many updates. It's like, no, actually, you know what? I'm not feeling well today. I'm a little cranky. And the podcast helps when I record.
Yeah, I feel like also I need like a lore diary and like put in what I've already talked about. Like I might need to start keeping a journal just to be like, okay, what can I talk about because my brain just stops working.
Yeah, I also think the heat makes me cranky. It makes me uncomfortable and
Sweaty.
but anyway, I'll be honest with you guys. I'm not feeling good today.
I'm not feeling good. I'm tired of the 90 degrees.
I'm not happy. I'm just
I'm
not
ready
happy.
for fall.
Yeah,
I'm ready for fall.
I really am. It's like almost halfway to Halloween, and I keep seeing the reels on Instagram with the Halloween stuff, and like when they do the aesthetic photos, and they're like,
Yes.
I am not the kind of person that likes to rush time, but I am done with summer. Like I don't care. I'm sorry if you like summer. I'm sorry. Fall, bring me back to fall.
When I dropped off
God,
packages at the post office, I was talking to the woman there and she was like, "How are you?" And I was like, "I'm tired of the heat. I'll be honest with you, girl. I'm tired of the heat. I want it to be fall." And she's like, "Yeah, I hear you. I'm done."
yeah, like my makeup's melting off my face. It's like I've just had enough.
Oh,
Just
yeah. There's no setting spray that can save me from being a sweaty Betty.
no. Anyway, so that's a lore update. So nothing really going on. If you want to hear lore, we did film a whole Patreon episode on it, and I'm like, I got nothing else to say. I feel like I hang out with you guys all the time. Well, what we have been working on, if you're interested in more resources outside of the podcast, is we actually have a blog going now. So right now we have Who is Aphrodite on, you can find this on the Sticks and Bones site listed in the show notes, crystalmonclarity.com. And we have, a little blog post about the evil eye. And we are also posting a ton more content on YouTube for Sticks and Bones, like little segments, and also our own separate Ghost Whisper and Dirt Diaries as well. So if you're like, why don't you guys have any lore? Well, we've just been reeling out some content for everybody. So if you're looking for more things, there are other free resources out there that we have curated, and they are just on different platforms aside from our social accounts, which also give a ton of information. It's like how much more? I don't know what else to talk about anymore.
I mean, speaking of nothing else to talk about, I think that kind of brings us to today's crazy kind of topic that might seem a little left field for everybody. Um,
Yes.
Chelsea and I had been talking about, doing something along these lines for quite some time. And all of a sudden we rolled up today and we're like, oh, this is what we're doing.
I think it's weird that we didn't even recognize it when we were talking about it because
Nope.
as to people who really understand Greek religion and the time, this is not anything new or maybe taboo for us to hear or talk about. And we have slightly talked about this topic with Iphigenia and Agamemnon on the podcast with Artemis.
Mhm.
But we're really going to be diving into it today. And yeah, there are elements of human sacrifice in this episode.
Yeah.
So
So with that being said, before we dive into this, viewer discretion is going to be heavily advised for this. If it is not for you, we welcome you to come back next time on Sticks and Bones. But this podcast is going to touch upon topics such as, of course, human sacrifice, unaliving, SA, and more. So please take care of yourselves while listening.
for sure, I think that is a really great PSA and announcement. And yeah, please take care of yourself. Don't feel bad if you can't listen to this episode or you want to. I get it.
Absolutely.
I know for me personally, when we get to my story about Hades and Persephone, I'm not going to be discussing any details. It's just going to make an alluded fact to the fact that there was a human sacrifice. I'm not talking about anything gory. I'm not talking about this, that, and anything else, because to be honest with you, I don't like knowing the details. And it's kind of like the Cassandra episode where I read through the myth and then I just really took all of those
Spark
details
noted.
out. I let you know, I don't want to take away from the history of like these things do happen, right?
Mhm.
That'd be bad, but I'm not going to be talking about anything I think is super gory.
Yeah, no.
If you're like, how far in depth are you going into this? So
It
yeah,
is not going to be on the level of true crime. I will say that.
yeah, no, mine is actually a myth. So
Mhm.
it's not something that actually happened. So if you, I don't know who's gonna go first, but if you're like, oh, maybe I don't want to listen to the stuff that actually happened, because 10's gonna be talking about the Vestal Virgins and things that actually did happen. So if that
Yeah.
deters your decision, that might be where you draw the line.
Yeah. I was gonna say, why don't we start with myth, go
Okay.
into reality, and then, kind of come back and, touch base together.
Well, I feel like before we start even with the myth, we do have to talk about the concept of Pietas.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to kind of begin and then wrap up with it of like, what did we learn today?
Do you want to give just like a brief overview of like
Yeah,
how you
absolutely.
define Pietas and like what it is? And then we're going to talk about, we have a lot of concepts we're going to talk about today, so bear with us. We're going to talk about at the end of this podcast how 10 and I look at Pietas, because I know a lot of you are coming from, you do practice Greek religion and Hellenic polytheism, and you're like, okay, if this is a concept people were doing, which was mostly Roman, how
Hmm.
are we viewing it? So we're going to give you our final thoughts at the end. So don't worry about that. Just allow yourself to take in the information. I think be very open to the things that we have to say and the
Hmm.
time period and how the people are viewing their society, right? You don't have to agree with the things that are going on, and you do not have to agree with this concept. But just keep an open mind is what I would say as we go through this episode of why. Why are people doing these things?
Absolutely. I think that's kind of the best way to kind of just set the scene.
For sure.
I know bias is going to be a big thing of just understanding, right now we're filming this in 2024. So understand like kind of what your beliefs are and try to not put those beliefs on, what individuals may have been doing 2000 plus years ago is what I always like to tell my students. But really, pietas, to kind of just go ahead and jump on in, is really the term just means maintaining the proper relationship with the divine. And this is really specific to pagan Romans because we don't see early Christians do this. We don't see people of the Jewish faith doing this at all. They are, really doing what they need to do with their sacred text during this time period. But for the pagan Romans and, even for, the ancient Greeks as well, there is no handbook. There is no one sacred canonized text that is really kind of like, here are all the canonized stories of, then this happened, then this happened. It's really a lot of looking through different authors. What are they saying? Comparing them, looking at playwrights, all of that kind of stuff. But the opposite of pietas is impietas, which really is interrupting the community's relationship with the gods by not following the community's rituals. It could also have to do with treason. Like these are the big hitters. Like you have to be doing like some big bad kind of things to be
Mhm.
in impietas. But I will say, pietas, impietas, they are community based. Why? Because the community was trying to do something for specific gods. If somebody wasn't showing up or doing the sacrifices correctly, they were kind of going by group project rules, and everybody had to be accountable with the same grade. And if a god was displeased, well, the entire community had to figure out what was wrong.
Yes. And obviously we are in 2024. So what does it mean when a god can be displeased? I'm using air quotes, right? Like if they
Mhm.
truly believe this thing happened. So it can be Apollo unleashing a plague on a town.
Yeah,
Did
absolutely.
Apollo really do such a thing, or was it because of hygiene and just illness being spread through a town? Now in 2024, we
Mhm.
probably would know that. But when you're a person in ancient times and you don't have that science or that knowledge yet, you are going to what? You're looking at your gods as, hey,
What's going on?
what's going on? Obviously, we have displeased Apollon. Why is
Hmm.
there a plague in this town?
That why are we having floods, famine? Why are we doing this? And they might be looking at omens and or prodigies, which could be, a strike of lightning hitting the Roman Senate. Like it has to be almost like strange and unusual that is not normal.
Yes.
That their hackles are rising like, oh, something is wrong. We have to get to the bottom of this, gang.
Right. And obviously we have stepped out of line, or someone in the community has stepped out of line. And now how are we resolving the issue? And we've
Yes.
talked about this before. And the way people resolve issues is they have to consult an oracle or a high priestess, depending on the
Mm-hmm.
god. Like I'm going to make reference to Apollo in one of my stories that has to do with Hades and Persephone, but they're going to spiritual
Professionals.
advisors to
Yeah.
seek guidance of like, what did we do?
Like there's whole colleges of priests in ancient Rome that, depending on what happened, Roman Senate would be like, oh, we got to talk to them. Or they would talk to the priestesses of Vesta. They would talk to the priestesses of Ceres, so the Roman Demeter. But like, you're going to a professional, right? You're not just like, well, Earl has some theories down the road. We should listen to him. Like, no.
No, because you run the risk of Earl being wrong and pissing the god off more because you didn't go to an appointed person of authority or power like the oracles of Delphi, right? Like that
Mm-hmm.
that is what you should be doing. That is what in
Yeah.
this society, that is what you should be doing. So
Yeah.
yeah, they're not just thinking that, oh, this could be the reason why. No, they're like, oh crap. We have to talk to somebody, and what is the god saying? Why are they
Yeah.
angry?
Do they have their person nearby that we can go speak to? Kind of like a specialist doctor. You're not going to just go to a family doctor for like something super specialized. You're going to go to an endocrinologist. You're going to go to like a dermatologist. Like nobody knows everything. So you have to go to the specialists.
For sure. And I think this is just such an interesting concept, but also it's not surprising that something like this would be in an ancient society of, okay,
Mm-hmm.
plague has struck the town. What have we done? Someone's pissed a god off. This is abnormal. Why aren't the crops growing? We're in a drought. What's going on? Who pissed off who? And I think it's even scarier that it's considered a group project because I don't know about you guys, but when I went to college and had to
Oof.
do group projects, I had to do so many presentations being a communications and marketing major, marketing brand presentations. You always had that one person that just never answered their phone, never did anything. And like you were always going to the teacher being like, we did the best we could, but Bob over here, he never showed up for the presentation. So like, how is this affecting our grade? And it does.
It does. Zeus is up there being the professor and is like, well, looks like you're out of piece. F.
For sure. And while we are not a community-based religion anymore. It's not like we're all
Yeah.
like living in these areas where everyone's worshiping like this one specific god and things like that. So I think in modern day, Pietas has become something a little bit more individualized in how you view the concept and what you think of it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know, does it make sense to talk about this now or maybe at the end of the episode?
I think we can talk about it now and, at the end, really kind of talk about how the stories fit in with that.
Yeah, and we were had very long discussions about this before we even did this podcast of like we don't want you to think that like the gods are angry and now you have to do all these things. No, pietas to me is kind of like how I define it of like how am I maintaining my good standing relationship with Hecate or King Hades or Queen Persephone, right? What are certain things that I do to keep me in a good relationship? So, and it's going to obviously depend on the person. I am a high priestess that works for them. So my relationship and what I depend on with the relationship is going to be different, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
like, so and so. So I was saying Hecate's Depnon is one thing that I outline as like, this is me maintaining my relationship with Hecate and keeping myself in line of making sure I'm leaving offerings, but that doesn't have to be for everybody. I kind of define it as like this
Mm-hmm.
is my own structure and this is what I do in order to maintain that, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely.
If I skip one
Yeah,
Deathnon because I'm not feeling well, she's not going to come down and smite me, but it's like it keeps me on track, I guess, like as a schedule of like do not forget about this relationship because that would be disrespectful in my realm.
absolutely. But I think that, lends perfectly from the past of, you know, there were, festivals, holy days, sacred days that like people had to perform certain duties to appease gods X, Y, and Z. But I also think Pietas is, you know, can be seen on like a smaller scale as well. So you were very correct in saying like it's not so community based today. But even with the ancient Romans, like for their own household, kind of aspects and chores, you had to tend to the family shrine, the household shrine. Like you had to make sure the lares, the genius, and the penates were taken care of. And you can kind of think of today like you, your spouse, your partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, anything, whoever you live with, your roommates, that can also kind of be your community today of like,
For sure.
am I keeping the house clean? Am I, if you want to leave offerings, you can do that. But it can also be like on a small scale like that too. And I think it just keeps it like regimented, like you said with Deipnon. So that's following like the lunar cycle, which
Mhm.
is great. But because, you know, today many people do not follow like the festival days or anything like that, it is kind of hard to like stay on a system and everything.
Yeah, and this might sound crazy, but like I actually like the concept of pietas. I was saying this to 10 earlier that it keeps me on a structured like regimen, and I need structure in my life. So to me, I'm
Yeah.
like I'm maintaining my relationships by doing this thing once a month. And this, Deppnon, I clean my whole house. I do a whole bunch of things. Like I have a schedule and I'm very schedule oriented. Very schedule oriented. So for me, it works. And I'm not saying everyone has to adopt this concept, but we did want to present it today because the ancients believed in it. It's something I personally practice too. I know you also believe in it. So it's like, why wouldn't we talk about it? Maybe it's something you want to incorporate or you want to learn more about?
Yeah, absolutely. It could be daily activities for like household shrines, or it could be monthly activities, like Deipnon.
Yeah, every Japnon I clean my house because I do that in honor of Hecate and then leave her offerings. And we've talked about that on the many, many of her episodes. But it is also a good reminder to me of, okay, today's a new moon. Guess what? We're out with the old and with the new. We're cleaning the house, baby.
Mhm.
Let's go. And, I have to be clean because of my spiritual work. So it's like,
Yeah, no, it makes sense. You could do monthly, you could do twice a year.
for sure.
For Eleusis, like it really depends on like what you're gonna follow. But as always, really look into like these larger concepts and how like the ancient individuals were like putting it into practice of their daily lives, because daily life and religion were one and the same, like they were synonymous with one another. So once again, just be sure you're dotting your t's, I mean dotting your i's and crossing your t's. Jeez.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good reminder to just like, oh yeah, I have to maintain this relationship. Like this is important to me. Because life can get busy and we forget. And trust me, I get that. So that is the overall concept of pietas. It's just keeping that staying in line sort of aspect. But we're gonna talk about what happens when you're out of pietas. And like 10 said, it's usually catastrophic things that are happening where someone did something so horrific that you've really angered the gods. Like
Yeah,
something terrible. Think of like the worst thing. Um, or what the ancients considered to be the worst thing. It may not be what we consider the worst thing. And I think
correct.
we need to differentiate that. Um,
Absolutely.
Once again, I want to let you know we're not condoning, human sacrifice, but it is something that we have to understand that it happened and do not place judgment on a society of people because this was their belief system.
Hmm.
Okay, so speaking of human sacrifice, I'm going to be talking about this one myth that I found. It's coming from a Roman author. So obviously it's not Greek, but it's Roman. And I felt like, this was something that I wanted to talk about today because pietas is more of like a Roman concept. So I feel like, why not have a myth that goes with it? And it mentions Hades and Persephone. So, hey, yeah.
Hey.
So this is what happened. And this is a myth. So it's not a real story. A plague seized the region of Viota, and many people died. Okay. People were dying, very sick. The people in this region were like, okay, there's a plague. Who did what? Because this
Hmm.
is not normal for us. All right.
Yep.
Officers of the region were sent to consult Apollon's oracle at Gortina. The god replied that they should make an appeal to the two gods of the underworld, which was Hades and Persephone. He
Makes sense.
said that they would cease from their anger if two willing maidens were sacrificed to the two of them. So they go to the oracle. Oracle gives us a message and says, you know what? You're right. Hades and Persephone is pissed off.
Mm-hmm.
But now the townspeople are like, what
What happened?
happened? And obviously, it probably has to do with burial rites, right? Like, why would you piss off the two gods of the underworld? I just got the chills, like full body chills. Okay, so why were King Hades and Queen Persephone angry? It was said that the king of this region was not properly burying the dead. And as we know, when you don't properly have burial rites or you're ignoring them, you're not, those people are not getting into Hades.
Oh,
You're holding up the line. Now we have the restless dead. There's tons of people not being buried properly because of the plague. Think about how many people that is, right? Now the
yeah.
underworld has a problem because this guy just said, I'm not doing it when he knows better.
Yeah.
And he is also an authority in the community, which they are held to a higher standard because they sometimes are believed to be chosen and favored by the gods.
Yeah.
So,
Divine right.
divine right. So now everyone's like, are you kidding me? And there's nothing they can really do about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, everyone hears the message from the oracle that starts, the rumor starts going through the city. Not one maiden in the city complied and stepped forward to be a sacrifice because
Well,
why would you be?
yes.
So the daughters of Orion, which they are nymphs, and Orion, I believe, is a giant. They hear of this thing going on within their region in the city of being like, okay, no one is sacrificing themselves. They are also two maidens. They actually were favored by Aphrodite. Aphrodite bestowed her beauty upon them. Like they were highly regarded by her. And I think this just speaks for, women. I just like this myth because I'm like, you know what? And you'll know why in a second. They were at work at their loom, and as soon as they heard about this, they willingly accepted death on behalf of their fellow citizens before the plague epidemic had gotten to them too. They cried out to the gods 3 times to the underworld, saying that they were willing to sacrifice themselves. They thrust their bodies in a specific way that, once again, I'm removing the details of this, and they sacrificed themselves by a trigger warning, slit of the throat. Now, in other versions of this myth, it's a little bit more gory, but I chose this one because I didn't want to talk about the other things.
Yeah.
As they both fell down into the earth, Persephone and Hades took pity on the maidens and made their bodies disappear, sending them instead up out of the earth as heavenly bodies. When they appeared, they were borne up into the sky, and men called them comets. The Aeonians, which were the people of this region, erected them a sanctuary where a proprietary sacrifice was offered to them every year by youths and maidens. And they called these maidens Phoronides. I don't know why I just got into my head, which means comets. So, don't think Hades and Persephone were like some sort of evil gods. They actually felt terrible that this had to happen. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, the king of the area was not properly burying his dead with respect and not making sacrifices to the gods during a plague epidemic. All right.
Yeah.
And probably before that, because Hades and Persephone had unleashed this upon them. So why is this important, right? Why is it important for us to talk about it? Well, one, we're referencing the concept of Pietas and how people really viewed the world around them. But two, I also want to condone the women of this myth and that they were really brave in saving their community. They stepped up and said, more people are going to die. And in order to stop this, we're going to be the ones. And I always think of Persephone being a maiden herself. And I think she probably took so much pity on them of like, no one else is stepping up and it has to be maidens because of the time period. And I'm probably like, I just envision her, it doesn't say this in the myth, of taking great care of them. You know what I mean? Like they died with like honor in my eyes of, you know what, Persephone, like she also was a maiden in her own right and didn't have a choice. And like, here we are.
No, absolutely. And just it's almost like you are doing it because of duty.
Yes.
So like it's like, oh, well, it's my duty. It's for honor. Like I should be doing this in a sense. But it is really interesting because there also is a version of that where Hades and Persephone get to them before they unalive
Ah,
and kind of like stop them. It's very, very similar to like like the biblical story of Abraham right before he's about to, sacrifice Isaac. It's very much like they get there in the nick of time, and then they are also, made into comments, which I think is just, incredible, because those comments, therefore, like, people would see them every so often, and therefore, like, are reminded of them. And comments are beautiful. So, like, Aphrodite's beauty still shines through it.
For sure. And they wound up getting a small temple that people left. Like they were memorialized forever. Like they
Yeah.
are never going to be forgotten. And now, there's this myth. And yeah, so they had a temple and people had to make sacrifices because they saved their town.
Oh,
They saved
yeah.
the people. And in that time, that is considered the highest honor. And they do it because they love the people around them. And, they knew they were going to be good with their gods. They knew that, hey, I'm going to be fine.
Damn, what happened to that king, man?
I don't know. It was, listen,
Oh.
if we go back to the Wrath of the Hades and Persephone episode, Hades plays a long game. So he probably let him live. And then that man probably got sent straight to Tartarus. Or he had improper burial rites somewhere. You know what I mean? Or like maybe
God, we can only hope that he didn't get burial rights.
it's either he didn't get burial rights or Hades said, no, I'm dealing with this guy one-on-one. And you're going to meet me face to face. And I don't know what's scarier, to be honest. I think it's getting to Hades and having to deal with Hades. Like,
yeah, I'd rather no burial rights. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I'd
I'd rather just be the restless dead, to be honest. Like, I would not want to go to Tartarus.
Nah, I've seen his work. I don't want to be pushing a boulder up a hill.
But I was thinking that, and I'm like, well, I got reminded of the Hades and Persephone Wrath episode, and I'm like, well, if I think about this,
Doesn't end well.
this man plays a long game, as we see in mythology. And I mean, he invited those heroes into his home to be like, oh, you think you're gonna steal my wife? Come, let's have a feast for you. Dude, people are so dumb. I would scream. I would screech. Like, imagine him having a party in the underworld. It wouldn't happen. Why did you think that was happening?
I don't know. Like the ancient male hero ego is like, to have that kind of like audacity is something that I want in my life. To just waltz into the underworld, pass Cerberus and all of the other trials and tribulations to get down there, and then just like, oh, the door was unlocked. Like, what?
Yeah, no thanks. I'm terrified. And that's that. So yeah, that is the mythological version of describing Pietas and then a sacrifice meaning to be made. So we are going to now move into the portion of the podcast for those of you that are like, I don't want to talk about the real version. We're going to be talking about the Vestal Virgins again.
Yeah, I do have two stories. One is a happy ending where 99% of the other time it's not. So we're going to do one of each because I don't really want to end this on a bad note. Like,
no. And for those of you that are tapping out here, or like, I don't want to continue. I highly recommend you listen to the High Priestess and Miasma episode, because we do talk about the Vestal Virgins actually, and some of the things that happen if, people were not in Pietas. So like,
you ain't missing out.
It's not as, I guess, bad. Like, not that the story's not as bad, but I mean, like, the episode's a little bit lighter where we're talking about miasma, and then we do
yeah,
the Vestal
Virgin. It's more like a comparison of like duty, jobs, that kind of stuff. We're
for
not
sure.
I think I mentioned a little bit of like the bad things, but
you do, but you don't. It's not anything. Yeah, you're not telling like a huge story. So, I just was reminded of that episode. I'm like, if you want to go back to that one, please feel free, because it does coincide with this one in a way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's two stories. So I'm gonna do like, I guess, the darker one first, because it's something that should be talked about, because it does go into the overall aspect of Pietas in a different kind of idea. But I think it also, Vestal Virgins as a whole, and kind of, if they are charged with crime and incesty and they are, convicted of it, I think it, really deserves a broader topic and conversation of why would we see this as human sacrifice. But fun fact, the Romans actually didn't consider it to be human sacrifice, which is,
and you see that a lot of things with a lot of concepts we have today that they don't have as a concept. And we I think we're going to talk more about this stuff on Patreon, to be honest with you. But the one big thing is the hymn to Demeter, and did Hades actually, how did he take Persephone? I think we're going to discuss that on Patreon one day, but anyway, continue.
Yeah. So with this, I'm going to start with, one that is very well known. So there's actually two instances. First, the Emperor Nero is said to have assaulted one of the Vestal Virgins during her 30 years of servitude, but it's not well documented if she was in fact like accused of crimen incesti, where she is breaking her virginity. But she just goes on for her 30 years. And then we also have another instance later on with Caligula, who's another winner of a guy. But it is said that he actually, unfortunately, essays one of the Vestal Virgins. A total of 4 are killed during his reign. And it comes from this one incident where one of the girls is unfortunately essayed by him. 3 of the others either knew about it or they were unfortunate witnesses to the scene.
Yeah, that's the worst thing that can happen is be a witness.
So because of that, they were treated just as guilty as not the emperor, as the girl who had her virginity taken. So with that being said, they were going to go to trial with all 4 of them. 3 of them, they kind of knew that they were on borrowed time at that point, and they were basically told, you're not going to win your case. Like, you are going to be convicted. And what happens when a Vestal Virgin is convicted? They are buried alive.
Yeah.
So with that being said, some chose to take their own life before Rome did it for them. So unfortunately, 3 did not make it to the trial. The one who was essayed went to trial, was found guilty. I believe she was acquitted first and then found guilty later. Then when she was, brought out to her basically like funeral chamber, she said that she was screaming the entire way saying like, I'm innocent, like the emperor did this. And it's really unclear how many people actually, believed her, because it is thought that a lot of people did, but it was the emperor. What are you going to say? Like, you can't convict him. You can't. Knowing what a terror this man was at this time, like,
and she's a woman.
Nobody could go against him. So unfortunately, it said that as like they closed the doors, she was still screaming her innocence. So I actually had a student years ago come to me and say, what happens to a Vestal Virgin if assault takes place? And unfortunately, the Romans during this time did not view assault the same way we do. They viewed it in the sense of, it doesn't matter how it happened. If the Vestal's virginity is gone, she is putting Rome in jeopardy. Why? Because it is the Vestal's duty to, one, keep the flame lit in the temple to Vesta, and to maintain their virginity, because they are technically, through the priestesshood, married to Rome in a sense for 30 years. And if they lose their virginity, they are putting Rome in jeopardy, in peril. So that is a lot of the time what happens. But what is interesting is, with this second story, is we have Tukia, who is a Vestal Virgin, and we see that she is condemned for losing her virginity, for crimen incesti. And Livy accounts this. And in his writings, he literally just says, she is condemned and convicted. But a line before that, and a few lines before that, it talks about different regions of Italy actually rebelling against Rome and the Roman Empire. Well, it was the Republic at this period. But the line before that talks about the Sardinians and others rebelling, and that they were put down. And every line following that talks about another rebellion happening. So Tukia is convicted, and she is basically awaiting her death sentence. So to prove her innocence, she grabs a sieve and calls out to the goddess Vesta, basically saying, hey, if I've done no wrong and I am truly innocent, allow me to use this sieve to carry water from the Tiber River to your house, which is the temple to Vesta, located in the Roman Forum, and allow me to carry water in a sieve, which is basically has holes in it, so you cannot hold water in it.
I was going to say, what is a sieve for those of us that don't know what that is?
Think of it as a colander, basically.
Gotcha. Oh gosh. Oh god. Yeah. You know what though? Like, I think I'd be doing that too. I'd be like, now it's time for me to perform a miracle. Vesta, let's go. Let's go.
So I actually, after translating all of this from Latin, I had to look up Google Maps style really quickly from the Roman Forum, from the Temple to Vesta to the Tiber River, how far that is. Do you want to take a guess at how far that is?
Oh God, I'm afraid I'm gonna be so embarrassingly wrong because my geographical skills are at.
I will say it's close. I'll give you a hint. It is close.
But what is close? Like I don't. You know what? No, I don't want to guess. 20 miles.
Okay. It is 700 meters.
Okay.
So that is 1650 is a mile or 1650 yards. I don't know what it is for meters, but it's very, very close. Like it is said to be like a 2-minute drive. So like walking it is
Oh,
still
it's
like
0.4. It's 0.4 of a mile.
it's still like that's something with a sieve. That's something.
I mean, no, that like 0.4 miles is actually long. It's really not. It's not short. Like if you're walking around with like a colander, like I don't know.
So 700 meters, but the area of the Roman Forum, if you've never been, there's a lot of hills in Rome. There's in fact 7 of them. So like you're walking up and above hills to get back to the temple to Vesta. Long story long,
I'd
she
be
does
having
it.
a panic attack, man. Like I don't even know. I'm putting myself in her shoes of like, it's probably hot. You're
It's
trying to
Rome,
prove
it's
your
hot, of course
innocence.
it is.
Anyway, go ahead.
But so after walking the 700 meters, she gets back there. So because she did this, she is in fact doesn't need to go to court anymore. She is in fact cleared because of the goddess. Like the goddess literally was like, okay, you know what? She proved her innocence, and Vesta is the final word on this. Not these men, not basically judge, jury, and executioner, not Rome, none of that.
I love
So
that for her.
it's really interesting because it really reminds me of saints and like the miracles that they
I was
perform.
just thinking of that. And I was like, is it inappropriate to bring this up? Because like so they had to perform miracles, but I mean, she literally was performing a miracle to save her life, like to literally save her life.
Yeah,
So,
save her life. And it is said that, some of the Vestal Virgins were believed to be able to like work or have the goddess work through them. Like they had special powers in a sense. Like that's why they were also chosen.
well, that
But
makes sense. If you are a someone that is like an oracle or a priestess or even the Vestal Virgins, right? You are chosen to do something. So yeah, why wouldn't you have some sort of special connection of the god that you devote your 30 years to, you know?
right? No, it makes total sense. And later authors also account for this tale as well with her. But it is interesting because later male authors also, you know, did always mention her like seductress nature. And it's like, no, she was innocent through and through. She wasn't, guilty of losing her virginity.
Yeah, they know the consequences. You think someone's gonna risk that? Like, no way. No way. They
Mm-hmm.
know the consequences of the actions if their virginity is gone.
Yeah. No, it's insane. It's
I'm
crazy.
happy there was one good ending to somebody being acquitted. And I truly believe Vesta showed up and showed out that day.
No, absolutely. And it really brings up the aspect of, why did Rome not consider this to be human sacrifice? Because they were against human sacrifice. They knew about it as a concept. They knew other cultures, especially like in Gaul to the north of them, that they were practicing that. But because Rome was high and mighty, they considered themselves to be like above that they could not stoop to that level.
Yeah, and it's like, look at what you're doing.
I mean, I've had this conversation with my old advisor many a time, and not even with Vestal Virgins, but with the Roman Triumph as well, when they are literally unaliving people in a public fashion, when they're bringing them back as like prisoners of war. And they're like, no, 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 we're not. This isn't human sacrifice. Like, we're doing this to close the war formally. Like, with this, Rome can rest. So it's a weird kind of concept and take. But with the Vestal Virgins, it's kind of the same idea. We're not killing them. We're just putting them in a room that's sealed underground. And I mean, they have a lamp, they have oil, water, milk, honey. I mean, if they go, I guess that's the God's will kind of deal,
Yeah,
which,
like, are you kidding me?
but what is interesting
Loopholes, I guess,
is
what they're calling it a loophole of. It's not human sacrifice. It just is the will of Vesta.
because I'm not killing them, because I'm not doing it, then like I can kind of pass the buck in a sense. But with Tukia and another Vestal who I'm blanking on her name, oh, Postnumia, they were basically charged with these crimes during periods of war because things were not going well for the Republic at the time. And when shit's hitting the fan,
You need a
who are you
scapegoat.
going to blame?
You need a scapegoat, yeah, because you can't say the emperor is making bad war strategies and war tactics and he's losing the war, because then that would go against his power and his reign. And then you kind of have something like a Julius Caesar where people then start rebelling against you or plotting your death behind your
Demise.
back.
Yeah, so it's crazy to see. And Postnumia also, she was acquitted as well. But it is really interesting to see that at periods of war, girls, Vestal Virgins specifically, are thrown under the bus to be like, now we got rid of the problem. You know, the fire went out, they lost their chastity, we fixed the problem. Now Rome shall succeed.
Yeah, it just what it happened. I mean, we have to talk about these topics because we can't not ignore
Mm-hmm.
them when we're talking about
Mm-hmm.
the ancient world. And I know sometimes it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for me.
Oh, it
I
is.
don't like to hear about the Vestal Virgins. I don't. I think it's important that we do understand, but I think it's
Yes.
almost as important to understand why people are doing these things. They literally thought their life depended on it.
Yeah.
And they would
And
do
if
anything to save their communities, to save their lives. Obviously, in these horrible situations, they were used as scapegoats, and no one is saying like they
you
knew
should do
that and
that.
they don't care because they were like, well, we did what we did. And
Yeah, and it's a good reminder to look at cultures on their own because different cultures, different societies through different periods of history, if they are, prescribing to human sacrifice, there is a reason behind it. And it is hard to take out our bias of it, of being like, oh my gosh, why would somebody do that? It's hard to kind of separate that. But at the same time, we need to talk about it and be like, okay, let's take off our 2024 cap. Let's put on our 2000 BC.
yeah.
Let's put on our 500 CE cap. And let's try and understand these individuals. And, was it in honor? Was it duty? Was it X? Was it Y? Was it Z? And how did these people view it? Did they view it the same way we do? Or did they view it in a different viewpoint?
Yeah, I mean, in my myth, it was an honor for them. They were like, yeah, I'm doing it. They volunteered themselves to
Mm-hmm.
save their people. They were doing it as an act of saving their people.
Mm-hmm.
So, however we want to take that, is however we want to take it. But that is the point of the myth: is that they were stepping up to the plate to save their community. You know?
Mm-hmm. And the people doing it, whether it was the girls who stepped up for their community or individuals who had to lead the Vestal Virgins to their resting place, how did they also view that
Yeah.
as well? How did they view themselves or the role that they played?
I also think it's interesting that both of our stories today reference maidens, people that classify as a maiden, a virgin,
Yeah.
someone is of beauty, someone that's unmarried, being
Mm-hmm.
sacrificed.
Yeah, it's really interesting with that. A lot of societies do that,
Yes.
but some also there are like, don't get me wrong, a lot of societies also do not.
Oh yeah, it depends on the culture. Like I said, it was happening in a lot of different places. So I know
Mm-hmm.
it's really taboo, but this is how the ancient people were thinking, and I think that's why we like to give this context because it's then you can better understand where these religious beliefs are born out of, why people are doing these certain practices, and then it gives you a better concept of like, okay, how big was this concept of pietas? Like people were really believing into this, and then we can take that on a much smaller scale, like Ten said, of like,
Yeah.
okay, I
Once
like the
again,
concept of being in peace with gods. Don't believe in human sacrifice, but what's something I can do of like keeping my peace in my relationship and things like that. So, yeah,
absolutely.
we have to
And
talk about it.
both stories rightfully had people in power making poor decisions and the community suffering because of it.
I think that
And
happens a lot.
really that is what Pietas is really in reference to. It's not like Zeus or, Jupiter, whoever is just going to strike you because you didn't, honor him.
No.
It's more like these people in power who may be going through a divine right to rule, or they're using power in such a way that they are chosen by the gods or anything like that. It is because they are in this position of power, whether they are divinely chosen, perhaps a son of a divine being, anything like that. It's almost like they know better and should be better, but they're tripping at the 1 yard line. And because of that, your punishment is going to be steeper than before. And because you're in charge, now it's going to affect everybody in order for you to learn.
Makes total sense. And, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, before we leave, I want to correct myself. I said Caligula. It was Caracalla as the emperor. I mixed up my emperors.
oh no, you're fine. I really quickly before we end, because like how do you end on a note of human sacrifice? Speaking of human sacrifice, honestly, or sacrificing yourself for your religious cause, we are actually talking about saints on the next Styx and Bones
Yeah.
episode. And yeah, we kind of don't talk about Catholicism as much anymore because we really are focused on
Mm-hmm.
talking about, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, etc. But the two saints that we're talking about in the next episode is San Gennaro and
Mm-hmm.
San Colodro, which actually is a folk saint of Sicily. And I'm celebrating, well, I would have already done it. Have celebrated his feast day on the 4th of July. And we're going to be talking about saints because saints, when we think of people sacrificing themselves,
Martyrs, yeah.
it was not always for pietas. It was for, I am standing for my religion and you're not going to take that from me. And there is a pagan element to something that we are talking about next week with San Gennaro. And these two saints are very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
The things that Catholics do are very interesting with their saints and their blood. They build basilicas on top of their deceased bodies. And so we're going to be talking about some of that next week because, well, 2 weeks from now. Because why not? Because I think it's kind of cool. We'll throw a little saint episode in there of like,
Absolutely. Going from, human sacrifice of oneself, martyrdom, like martyrs were occurring in the Roman world as well in the first few centuries. So I mean, I think it fits perfectly.
I think it does too. And I think we've picked a really good pairing. I know San Gennaro is probably one of the most popular ones. I used to go to the festival actually every year when I used to work in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
It was my
It's insane.
It's so fun. Actually, over the years, it's gotten pretty bad, I will have to say. Bad as in it's not as like exuberant as it used to be, and it kind of makes me sad. My parents said the same thing. We went like a few years ago when I was my
Mm.
last year of New York before COVID hit. And they were like, "Oh my God, this used to be so much better." I'm like, "It was, right? It was." So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the dwindle down in religion, to be honest with you, and people celebrating Saints Feast Day. I think that's like occurring.
It honestly could be,
Like
but
the money that goes into it,
it could be. It also could be more like Americans like not grasping it anymore, because when I went to Naples, and like Naples is like San Gennaro's territory, like everybody like pulling you off the side of the road. If you said, "Who's San Gennaro?" 85 people were lined up waiting to tell you about him. And
Well, that's their patron saint. So we're going to be talking about that,
yeah,
like how specific regions have patron saints or specific La Madonnas. Anytime I'm talking about a patron, I always mention Athena in Athens because if you don't know what I'm talking about, you immediately know when I say that of like she was
yeah,
the patron of Athens. So
correct.
yeah, they should know about San Gennaro if they're living in Naples. But I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think it has to do with the Italian American community no longer really residing in that area.
it
We
could
all
be.
like
Yeah.
moved out into like the suburbs and like never went back to Little Italy. So anyway, that will be like an interesting episode. I'm super excited about it. So yeah,
Oh my God, I know. I can't wait to post some images from his tomb that I got to see. I can't
I
wait.
know. And I've done the San Colodro feast day at my house with all my crazy Italian family there.
Mhm.
They look at me like I'm nuts. They're like, "What is she doing?"
What is she doing? But I'm super excited to be
But
here
they're
and
like,
celebrate.
"Yes, I'm gonna partake in this." But what is she doing? It's a saint. All right, we're good. So I'll post some pictures of that as well. But anyway, that's what's coming up on Six of Bones. We're kind of taking like a hard right turn, same topic still, but
Yeah.
different
Uh,
turn into a different religion, which people love the comparison between, Greek religion and maybe Christianity, Catholicism. So anyway,
I mean, that's why my students love my class so much. So
Yeah,
get the
it's fun.
greatest
It,
hits.
it makes it
But with,
way more digestible.
it does. And it's really interesting that way.
I
God.
think I think for me, it makes me feel better about Catholicism sometimes because I'm like, we're really not that different. We're really
No.
not like, why do we all not like each other? We're really not that different.
Ugh, talk about why do we all not like each other? Just look at like the religious history of Europe.
Of anything, to be honest
Of
with you.
anything.
Like, yeah, it's like,
Who's ruling when, and like, ugh, they get rid of one, they bring in the other, who when
yeah,
the next person comes in, you can't keep track of it all.
you can't.
But anything else to add before we end today's episode?
Um, oh yeah, I've updated my readings. I have Aphrodite Love readings in the store now. So if you guys are interested, they're only going to be there for the summer. King Hades is not coming back to the fall. Obviously it's girl time in the temple. So yeah, I took his readings down. I restocked some of my stuff. Yeah, if you're interested in seeing the San Calogero vlog, it is on the Ghost Whisperer Patreon. So my Patreon members will be getting that. And I hoped I had interviewed some of my family members.
We hope, fingers
Aunt Jean's
crossed.
son is coming. Aunt Jean's son is coming to this. My Aunt Jean
Ooh.
used to be the one. You guys know if you've been here, I don't have to tell you the story. If not, go listen to some Sticks and Bones episodes. You'll figure it out.
Go catch up. If you know, you know. If you don't, well, you're lost. But
Mhm.
with that being said, that is where we are going to leave you. Check out Chelsea's readings. Check out all of the incredible courses that are up. We now have 3 up. That's right. We have the
Oh, I
Hecate
forgot.
course. We have the not the Aphrodite course. Well, she features in it. The Oracles of the Ancient World course, where I also do a case study into looking at the oracular site to Aphrodite that I've actually gotten to visit before. And we do have, of course, because it's summertime, the Evil Eye course as well. Don't forget to check our website for blogs and resources. Check out Chelsea's readings for more. Temple Store for altar products and more. Research with Dr. K. And yeah, we will see you guys in 2 weeks for some Saint fun. And with that being said, we'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.